Okay, here are the patch 15.14 notes. We're going to see nerfs to Braum. Rest in peace, brother. Lee Sin, Riven, Set, Twisted Fate, Yasuo, Yuumi, Zoe, as well as buffs to Azir, Briar, Darius, Fiora, Fizz, Ziggs, and they're going to be adjusting Kled with a lot of system changes to Blade of the Rune King, the Bounty System, Guardian, Haunting Guise, Kraken Slayer, Phantom Dancer, Roa, and Unsealed Spellbook. So let's get right into the patch. Yunara is a new champion that's going to be released on this patch. They're saying that she's being released July 16th. I'm not sure what 1900 UTC means, but sometime July 16th. The patch should be dropping between the 15th and the 16th, so by the time you're seeing this, it's probably live. That's Mac OS. OpenGL to Metal transition and DirectX changes starting in patch 25. Let's just say 15.2, we started to move Mac players over to Metal. In 15.12, we quickly reverted players back to OpenGL due to a gameplay affecting issue. This also caused some Mac players to receive an incorrect message that their hardware will not be compatible with League of Legends going forward. That's a huge mistake. As of this patch, we're redeploying Metal to Mac and have corrected the hardware eligibility check to be accurate. Imagine you went out and bought a new computer because of that. That would suck. I'm sure that happened to somebody. That's crazy. Starting this patch, if you receive a message about your hardware not being compatible with League, it's now accurate. Let's do better. If you have any questions or other issues, please contact player support. Nice. Azir, base health increase, W damage increase. This is crazy because Azir is actually like doing pretty well in competitive and stuff like that. This is obviously kind of a competitive change. They said that their recent set of changes to Azir has left him a bit weak. So now that MSI is over, his base health is going up 25 and his damage is going up from 40 to 60% AP to 45 to 65% AP ratio. So these are pretty nice buffs to Azir. The 25 base health early is really going to help him in lane quite a bit and scale to where he's the strongest. So these are quite decent changes in a positive direction for Azir. I've been keeping tabs on this one. Braum needed to be hit, and I actually think that this is a really nice change. I'm really glad that this is the direction that Riot went with Braum. Braum's base armor is going down from 47 to 42, and this isn't that big of a deal. It's going to affect his lane versus certain champions. Certainly he's going to take more damage early with less armor, but it's not targeting one of his key strengths as a champion, and I think that's appropriate considering he's doing well because of the champions that are surrounding him in AD carry right now, rather than because of any changes to the champion himself. The other thing about this that's nice is that his itemization often over prioritizes armor in an inefficient way, and so having 5 less armor is going to be less of a big deal on Braum once you buy your items anyways. So once you have Locket and Knight's Vow, you're going to make up for a lot of this armor in a way that's more efficient and isn't going to feel the same. Even though you are 5 armor down later, it's not going to feel as big as 5 armor down would be if you were at an efficient curve on armor compared to health. Braum overbuilds armor, right now with his itemization, so this isn't going to feel as bad, especially once you have items. It's just going to hurt his laning phase a little bit, and I think that that's totally appropriate. Again, I hope that when they understand that Braum is being hit because of the champions around him in AD carry, and that's appropriate right now, that when they address AD carry itemization and Yuntal and IE, if that gets pulled back in any way, they're going to need to come back and revert this change to Braum, especially if they keep hitting Braum, or if Braum's win rate stays the same and doesn't decline, and we're back here again with another nerf. I really want to make sure that Braum isn't the type of champion that's left forgotten for 2 years after he's been nerfed because of unrelated things shifting in the meta, they come and they hit Braum, even though nothing about Braum as an individual champion was off. And then all of a sudden they nerf what was actually causing him to be strong. The meta shifts and he, gets stuck at a 48 or a 49% win rate for years. So, I'm going to keep tabs on this and hope that doesn't happen. But this is a totally fine change. Briar, R cleanse change, Q bug fix. Her R certain deaths, CC cleanse. CC is cleansed when the missile hits. To Briar is cleansed when the missile hits and is now immune to CC for the 1.25 second cast animation that plays after the missile hits. Okay, so that's a little bit better. Help resolve any issues that occurred if Briar was CC'd before her dash. So this is mostly to just make sure that her ult goes off properly. It's almost like a bug fix. And then fixed a bug where W Frenzy would sometimes prioritize minions if Briar casts Q on an enemy champion standing near an allied minion. So yeah, these are mostly just minor fixes. They shouldn't really, they are counting this ult as a buff. But this shouldn't really change a whole lot, so that should be fine. A lot of times, it's pretty rare for you to get stunned on Briar when you're waiting to dash in towards the person. A lot of times it's from so far away that you couldn't get hit by a CC anyways while waiting. So these are mostly very, very slight minor changes that shouldn't change the champion at all. Darius Q heal increased. Missing health 15 to 45% to 17 to 51%. So he's getting more missing health there. And then same on 1 to 3 plus targets. And let's see. So this is bigger the more targets you hit. So that means that you get more benefit, than before for hitting more people. But you're getting a little bit more healing from Q. Honestly, I think that makes a lot of sense too. I don't think that Darius is that good. And I think that to be 100% honest with you, his Q healing feels really underwhelming compared to what I remember back in the day. This isn't really something I've thought about much. But when I think about it, Darius Q used to heal him like an insane amount. And I feel like players maybe at my rank are so good at avoiding the Q. The guy barely heals for anything ever. So I feel like this is a nice little quality of life change. You know what I will say about that though? That means this is a lower elo skewed change, and that doesn't make any sense. Darius is weak at high elo, but he's a pub stomper in low elo. And so unless the win rate data suggests that he's underperforming even in low elo, this is a really low elo skewed change where he's going to be able to hit multiple targets against bad players in lane and stuff like that. So this seems weird because they're giving him a bigger buff in low elo than they are in high elo, and they should have targeted something that makes him better in high elo and worse in low elo, or at least mostly better in high elo and not that much better in low elo. So that's a little bit weird. Fiora, R healing per second increased, visual bug fixes. Heal per second 40 to 100% based on vitals to 100% always. Interesting. Obvious healing. Healing circle now persist for the full 5-second duration. No gameplay change. I gotta read the blurb because this doesn't make sense. We're fixing a Fiora bug, okay, and re-adding some old functionality as a way of buffing her teamfight capabilities. For the last 2 years, Fiora's R has been bugged to always last 5 seconds, but scale the heal per second based on the number of vitals triggered. We're updating it with a version that gives her the full heal in all cases, just like when her original rework shipped. We'll be keeping an eye on her power level after this bug fix to make sure she doesn't end up dominating the top lane, but for now, enjoy the extra heals. Yeah, I agree. This is like a major bug. I'm surprised they allowed this to exist for so long. Because this is a gigantic buff to Fiora, absolutely massive. And so the fact that it was a bug and they just let it persist in the game for a year or two has got to be infuriating to Fiora players. This is why I'm so worried about what this tiny nerf with Braum, because Braum's doing well. The nerf probably won't even push his win rate down that much. And then what's going to happen? right? Like, is he going to get nerfed again and again and again, and then we're going to forget about him for 2 years? I don't know. I'm worried, man. Fizz, W cooldown reduced at higher ranks, E AP scaling increased. W cooldown 7 to 5 seconds to 7 to 3 seconds. Okay, that's quite nice. Let's think about that. Except doesn't it reset if you're using it to last hit minions properly anyways? So that's not... 3 seconds is a really short cooldown though. And with cooldown reduction, I mean, imagine this is like 1.5 seconds later on. You just like spamming W. E, Playful Trickster, damage 80 to 280 to 80 to 280, but 95% AP instead of 90%. So 5% AP ratio boost on his E. It's not that massive, but I don't think we really know where Fizz is at right now because, as they're probably saying, I haven't seen people playing Fizz. He's been completely irrelevant for so many years that I'm starting to wonder now, like, if people start playing Fizz seriously again just because they see these buffs, even though the buffs like themselves are like, they're decent buffs, but they're not massive. But if people start coming back to the champion, and maybe the champion is actually better than people thought, because Fizz used to be a pretty, staple pick in League. He used to be kind of a champion, right? And I feel like people have just forgotten about this champion, and even a placebo buff would cause people to return and do fine on the champion. So a significant buff, or not necessarily a significant buff, but a decent buff to the champion could cause quite a bit of, people to return to the champion, and he could actually end up doing quite well. So I think that this might end up looking bigger as a buff than it actually is, if that makes sense, if people start doing really well and returning to the champion in large numbers. So we'll have to wait and see on these Fizz changes, but this is interesting. Kled, all abilities adjusted. Oh god. Dismount Kled auto attack damage against champions 80% to 100% at levels 1 through 16 instead of 80%. So his dismounted auto attack damage is going way up. Skarl health 400 to 1550, which was a linear scaling, is now going down from 400 to 1400. Stat progression multiplier scaling. This update just means that Skarl's health will follow the same rules as other champion stats do. Okay. Courage gained from minion last hits is going up from 4 to 5, so this is helping him to remount faster, but he's getting less health. Dismount speed boost acquisition range. 1000 to 1200. I'd be lying if I said I knew exactly what the dismounted speed boost acquisition range means. My best guess is that's like, I have no idea. My best guess is I have no idea. Dismounted movement speed reduction was minus 60 movement speed. Now he's losing 40 movement speed instead on dismount. Dismounted bonus movement speed. I mean, isn't acquisition... This is what I'm confused about with this one. Isn't the acquisition meaning him getting Skarl back? But then it says... Yeah, I have no idea. Okay, never mind. Dismounted speed boost acquisition range. Dismounted bonus movement speed toward enemy champions. It's going from 100 to 185 to 70 to 155. So that's he's getting a lot less movement speed when he's dismounted moving towards enemy champions. I think this is just making me realize I don't know how Kled works. He gains movement speed towards enemy champions when he's dismounted? I'm not a top laner, by the way. To be honest, it surprises me every time I look at a top laner's abilities how little I know about them. It is what it is. Skarl health gained on remount, 45 to 75% to 40 to 70%. So that's big too, because not only does Skarl have less health, but he's also gaining less of that health back because he only gets a percentage of it back, which of course I also didn't know. He also is getting a little bit less of that health back, and it's of a lower amount. Courage from takedowns 20 to 0. That's interesting. And Skarl's health is now granted at the beginning of the remount sequence upon gaining 100 courage, rather than at the end of the remount sequence. That's a big deal, because getting the health back is obviously, most of the time, it really comes down to a matter of like half of a second, a quarter of a second, whether he lives or dies when he remounts. That happens a lot. And so him getting the health faster is going to trick a lot of people for a while until people are used to the new way that it works. So I hate buffs like this, actually, because I think that this is a temporary it's a temporary buff. It's something that just throws people off for no reason when it doesn't need to be changed. And then, it causes, people to misplay against the champion because it's all of a sudden it's different than they're used to. And I hate changes that do this. I feel like there's so many ways to move a champion up or down that don't do that. So I'm not a fan of that. Dismounted Kled now gains 1% bonus HP as armor and magic resist. Hold on, let me read that again. Dismounted Kled now gains 1% of his bonus HP as armor and magic resist. Increased by 20% for each nearby enemy champion, up to 2% of his bonus HP. Oh, yeah. So I guess he's losing. Well, that's when he has Skarl. So when he's dismounted, he's going to be a little bit tankier as well. Dismount dash time, so he can stack his thing faster on minions, his courage faster to get Skarl back on minions, but a lot slower from takedowns because he doesn't get 20 from takedowns, which was a big source of it before. So he'll be a lot slower to remount, especially in the middle of a fight. But he's tankier and does more damage when he's dismounted now. The dismount dash time is now consistently 0.75 seconds every time. Q, mounted bear trap on a rope. Initial hit bonus AD ratio 65% to 60%. Total damage from initial hit and pull reduced from 195% bonus AD to 180% bonus AD. His slow is going from 40 to 60% to 30 to 50%, so the damage is down, the slow is down. The slow duration is up, though, from 1.5 seconds to 2.5 seconds. That is a nasty long slow. That actually increases the effectiveness of the slow, I would say, significantly. I think that's a buff, even though this is slightly lower. Now calculates pull damage on pull rather than when the tether is attached. Okay. Now checks a small area around Kled's 0 point before the missile is fired. No longer applies grievous wounds on pull. That's a big deal for certain matchups. Certain matchups like against a Mundo or something like that, that's a huge deal. Pull timer is now consistently exactly 1.75 seconds every time. I love changes like this and the dismount thing, though, which is like the opposite of this temporary thing. It's like, okay, we're making the champion more consistent so that when you see it and you play against it, the game makes more sense and it's consistent every time. I can get behind that. It makes the game easier to understand, not harder. Ammo charge time on his Q dismounted, the pocket pistol. So when he's dismounted, his little shotgun Q, ammo charge time 20 to 7.5 seconds based on level to 18 to 10 seconds based on ability rank. Okay, so that's going to be interesting. So it's shorter cooldown earlier and a longer cooldown later. Does Kled max Q first? I would assume that he maxes Q first, probably, right? Let's look it up. We are way zoomed in here. Yeah, he maxes Q first. So I'm too tired to do the math, but there's obviously a break-even point here. It looks like it's going to be better earlier, worse later. Damage per pellet, 35 to 95 to 35 to 95, 80% bonus AD to 65% bonus AD. So a lot of damage missing here as well. Now checks a small area around Kled's 0 point before the missile is fired to hit champions. They keep adding this in. It's probably just a behind the scenes, make things work smoother change, but it's a bit weird. Damage to champions is now recognized as single target rather than AoE damage. Why? Isn't it AoE? That's so strange. This is another change. If it's AoE, if that's how it works, that's really weird. Because, again, changes that make the game more confusing, like, oh, because we want it to work with a certain item or rune this way, we're just going to make it single target, even though it is AoE, if that's the case, is so confusing. It's going to become this factoid that's lost to time after this patch, and people would be like, wait, what? It works like that with this new rune 10 years later from now? And we'll be like, I don't know. Everyone forgot, but apparently they changed it, and in patch 25.14 or 15.14 or whatever it is, we're not even going to know what patch we're on. They're calling it 25.14, so we're going to be in season 25 10 years from now. We'll be on the actual patch 25.14, and we'll be like, wait, they said they changed it on this patch 10 years ago. I don't know. W violent tendencies, damage 20 to 60 to 20 to 60, plus 4.5 to 6.5, plus 4.5 to 6.5%, plus 1% per 20 bonus AD, now 1% per 50 bonus AD. That's a huge damage reduction. So you're getting 1% of the target's maximum health per 50 instead of per 20, but you also get a 1% per 250 bonus health. So this is a really interesting change. So it's not necessarily less damage if you have enough bonus health. And this kind of rewards health for Kled for building health, right? And for building kind of a tankier bruiser build. Again, there would be some break-even point here based on his build that we're not going to get into. Cooldown 11 to 5 seconds to 13 to 9 seconds. So it's longer at all ranks. Attacking enemies while violent tendencies is on cooldown now reduces the remaining cooldown. 1.5 second reduction for champion attacks, 0.5 second reduction for non-champions. No longer starts the W sequence when attacking wards. Instead, attacking wards matches plant behavior and maintains the attack speed without consuming your W. That's a nice quality of life change. E jousting, damage 35 to 135. To 130 or to 35 to 135, plus 65% bonus AD to 65% bonus AD. This is really weird because there was just no change here, yet they've highlighted the plus 65% bonus AD like it's a change. So I have no idea if they typoed the patch notes and this is actually meant to be like plus 70 now instead, or if this was wrong and it used to be 60. We actually have no idea because this is clearly typoed. But this says no change, even though it's highlighted like there's a change. I don't know what to tell you about that. Now has a HUD tracker to indicate how long you have to recast E2. Now has a range indicator while E2 is active. R charge. Oh my god, look at the list of bug fixes. Minimum damage 4 to 6%. To 4 to 8%, plus 4% of 100 bonus AD to now 3% per 100 bonus AD of target's maximum health. Maximum damage from 12 to 18% to 12 to 24%. So they're increasing his damage, minimum and maximum damage on R. Let me read this, make sure that this is right. And then we're going from 12% per 100 bonus AD to 9%. So they're decreasing his reliance on AD in a lot of different areas, but they are increasing the base amount by enough that this is a buff, although not at rank 1. So rank 1 ult is actually going to be less damage, and then rank 2 and rank 3 ults are going to be more damage, and at all ranks it's less reliant on AD. Damage type, physical, change to magic. That's a big deal though, because changing his ult to magic damage is insane, because obviously targets have a lot less MR than they do physical armor, and they're also going to have a lot less MR if they're like laning versus Kled. So that may actually mean that even if he's losing 3% of the damage on his ult or something like that, that may be made up for by the fact that this is magic damage instead of physical now. And that gives him a decent chunk of damage in his kit that's magic, which can really help him to do a lot more damage when he's fighting somebody. So that's kind of interesting. I kind of take issue with this change again. I'll just say, I think making abilities do magic damage that are supposed to be like physical damage abilities is another weird counterintuitive change to the game that I think doesn't have a place in League. So while I get that it can help to balance the champion out, you've just done a million things to help balance the champion out, and he's obviously going to come out of this with so many changes, you don't know exactly where he's going to land. He'll probably have a low win rate for a little while people are learning to adapt to the changes, and then it'll go up, and maybe it'll either be not so good and you'll need to buff him, or it'll be bad and they'll need to, or that's what I just said, or it'll be too strong and they'll need to nerf it. But, so making a change like this is just kind of unnecessary and counterintuitive, because Kled's ult isn't a spell, and we're talking about like lowercase spell. We're talking about like magic damage abilities are supposed to have a certain feel to them. Physical damage abilities are supposed to have a certain physical element to them. And Kled's ult, running at someone and charging into them, is clearly something that to a normal player, a low-rated player who doesn't read the wiki, like it feels like this is going to be a physical damage ability that's hitting me, that I'm playing against an AD champion and I want to itemize, full armor. And adding weird things like this, I think, just overcomplicates the game in a way that sucks. That's all that there is to it. Now has a ping override for pinging the ultimate's range. And then there's a whole host of bug fixes that we're not going to go through. And that's where we're at with Kled. Like I said, I gave my take on that. Whenever they make these big changes to champions and really change up a lot of their abilities, it takes players a long time to adjust. For example, the Kled like dismounting timing and stuff being slightly different, that'll mess with Kled one tricks and Kled players just as much as it'll mess with other people playing against it. So it can really lower a champion's win rate because people are basically playing a new champion for the first time. Not that these were, not that this was such a severe rework or something like that, that he's a new champion. I think his abilities are almost all exactly the same. Mostly it was, timings and damage numbers that were being changed. But when they change a champion significantly, even if they're not reshaping how the abilities work entirely, it's going to throw people off. And so his win rate's going to go down, and then it'll either be too strong or it'll be too weak, and then they'll adjust in the upcoming patches. Lee Sin, base AD, they did nerf Lee Sin. His base AD is going down from 69 to 66, which I think is appropriate. He's been doing pretty well. I pointed out, I think, in a recent video that Lee Sin's doing pretty well for a champion that is supposed to be hard to play and normally sits at a little bit of a lower win rate. He's very popular right now and well over 51% or something like that, even though he's a champion that's supposed to be super hard. Riven passive AD ratio decreased later. AD ratio 30 to 60% based on level, now 30 to 50% based on level. I don't think that that's that big of a deal. Riven's one of the best light fighters, particularly in skill play. Well, it's important to us that deeply invested players are rewarded for their mastery. She's currently bursting a little bit too hard in the right hand, so we're giving her a little tap down. This isn't because of the Teemo clip, although we aren't surprised to see how many of you love watching Teemo get popped. I'm not even familiar with the clip, so GG, I'm out of touch. AD ratio on her passive. Yeah, this doesn't seem too bad, so I think this is okay. This is fine. Set, armor growth, 5.2 to 4.7. Set's been quite potent and popular, particularly in average skill brackets. I was going to say Azir, but I guess in average skill brackets, he's been doing decently. So they're changing. We're going for a simple, unfeelable change around his armor growth. Okay. I think that this is fine. It's a tiny, tiny nerf to his armor growth. It's not going to be that big of a deal. I completely agree. I think this is an unfeelable change. So then the question is, why? You never know. Twisted Fate, Q damage decreased. Damage 70 to 250 to 60 to 240, so he's losing 10 damage. And then his ratios are staying the same. Yeah, I'll tell you this much. Twisted Fate's been performing well recently. I agree with that. However, 10 damage off of his Q, off of the base damage on his Q, is not going to move the needle on Twisted Fate at all. This does absolutely nothing. But I don't think that Twisted Fate is particularly broken. He's doing well, but I don't think that he's broken, so I don't mind a light nerf, on the champion. I think it's fine. Not that big of a deal. Not a very big nerf. Yasuo AD growth decreased. AD growth from 3 to 2.5. Yasuo has been quite strong. I don't know that Yasuo has been quite strong, but maybe that's the case. I don't really know. I haven't seen a lot of Yasuo. If anything, Yasuo has been played a lot more in bot lane recently than in mid. But maybe this is my out of touch high elo take, is that everyone's playing Yasuo in bot lane instead of mid lane. I haven't seen a Yasuo mid in who knows how long. And it's not good when people play it. And I'm pretty sure it's when people play it in low elo, I'm pretty sure it's not good either. So, unless I'm severely mistaken. So, again, I don't know what's happening there. Not that big of a deal, though. Not too bad. Yuumi, R heal per tick increased. Am I missing something? They mistyped this. This is R heal per hit decreased. Look, I'm tired today too. I get it. But whoever wrote the patch notes, they're tired as well. Okay, because this should be R heal per hit decrease. And then we had one change where it was highlighted and there was no change at all. So I don't know what's going on there. But this is 30 to 50 to 30 to 50 plus 15% AP ratio to plus 10% AP ratio. So she's losing 5 AP ratio off of her ult per tick. There's 5 ticks on Yuumi ult. Not a very big deal. It's a pretty small amount of healing. Yuumi doesn't really typically carry around that much AP, so it's really not that big of a deal. Keep in mind, though, that the AP that Yuumi does get is multiplied in terms of the amount of healing that it does, because with items like Moonstone and healing and shielding power, 5 healing, because of, let's say you have 100 AD on, or 100 AP on Yuumi, 5 healing doesn't just mean 5 healing, it means 5 healing per tick, which is now 25 healing. And then with Moonstone, it's going to be, well, not quite doubled. It would be like 35% or something like that. But so, you end up with like 40 or 35% for Moonstone. So then you're talking about almost double. So you're maybe talking about like 40 healing plus your healing and shielding power. So it can quickly snowball. So it's not nothing, but that is interesting. Yuumi's ban rate has been climbing recently. I've been saying this for patches now, they are so scared of Yuumi being a champion. It is actually crazy. I think Yuumi is awful. I think there is no champion, legitimately, and I'm a pretty decent support player, not to toot my own horn. There is no champion that I hate playing more in solo queue, that I have had a harder time doing well on in solo queue in the entire game than Yuumi. I have never had such a bad win rate on a champion. Maybe it's that I've been playing Yuumi at all the wrong times when she was terrible instead of when she was broken. Maybe it's that Yuumi is blacklisted. Riot said it on another patch. Yuumi's job is to transition new players into the game, to give players with no familiarity to League, who maybe want to play with their friends, probably play bot lane with someone they know, give them an ability to play the game and enjoy League. And then once they enjoy the game and they get into it and they get an account and they have some levels and they're doing something with the game, then maybe they try a champion that actually requires you to click and play the game. So Yuumi is an introductory champion to the game, and she can fulfill that role even if her win rate in ranked is always abysmal. So Riot has embraced this idea that Yuumi should never be viable in competitive. She's too systematically broken, and she probably shouldn't even be viable in solo queue at almost every rank, even at low ranks to a certain extent. But it is okay for her to be there as a champion to help new players like get into the game. Not even to learn the game, because a lot of stuff about Yuumi actually is anti-learning how to play the game, like not having to right-click. But she's there to transition people into being interested in the game in the first place. That means that their philosophy now is to keep Yuumi locked away in the basement and nerf the champion anytime they see anything positive happening with it. So I think my Yuumi win rate is going to stay low forever. I don't know when I'm going to get the opportunity to fix my win rate on the champion. It's probably doomed. Okay, Ziggs, Q damage increase late, E damage increase late, R damage adjusted, Q bouncing bomb 85 to 285 to 80 to 280. So it's losing 5 damage at all ranks. And then the AP ratio is getting changed so that it scales. So it's going to start out changing from 65% at all levels to 60 to 80%, depending on how many points you have into it. That is actually really interesting, because that could be, Ziggs is actually kind of supposed to be, believe it or not, was at one point kind of a scaling champion. And so this could be kind of interesting, because now, well, it is true that he's losing that 5 damage, and then he's losing another 5 early if he has 100 AP. By the time that he gets like, a couple of points into it, and he does max Q, by the time that he's level 9, even without any AP, he's going to be doing 15 more damage if he's got 100 AP, which is going to make up for this -5 on his Q by a long shot. So at level 9 with 100 AP, Ziggs is going to do 15, he's going to do 10 more damage than before with his Q. So this is actually a buff, not even that late game, like pretty early on Ziggs, this could end up being a buff. Interesting. And then his E, what did they call this? Q damage increase late? I don't know how late they mean, but E Hexplosive Minefield, damage per mine 30 to 190 to 30 to 190. And then same thing, instead of a 30% AP ratio, it's going to be 25 to 45%. But again, this is a much bigger AP ratio increase. So while it's a little bit weaker early, this is going to be significantly stronger later, because the base damage is staying the same. They did it again, by the way. They highlighted the base damage here, and the base damage over here was not changed, but they highlighted it like there was a change here. But obviously this is going to be actually a pretty nice increase. And then our Mega Inferno Bomb, maximum center damage from 300 to 600 to 300 to 700. And it's going from 110% AP to 100% AP. Minimum damage is still 2/3 of maximum damage, which means that the minimum damage is also getting increased by this base amount of 50 and then 100. Although, well, you'd have to have a lot of AP, though, for that to be a nerf. You'd have to have 500 AP for, at rank 2 ult. You'd have to have 500 AP to be losing 50 and to be dealing the same amount of damage. And so this means that not only is the maximum center damage increased, but the minimum damage is also going to be increased because it's 2/3 of the maximum damage. So this is going to be a buff at most. It'll be a nerf at rank 1 in the ult, because you're losing 10% AP ratio, no damage increase. You're going to have less than 500 AP probably at rank 2. So it should be a buff. And then you're going to have... You would need 1,000 AP to make up for the 100 that base damage that you're getting, minus the 10% AP. So you're going to have less than 1,000 AP as well, I would assume, for 3 points in ult. So I think that most of the time this is a buff to his ult damage all around, not even just the maximum center damage as we talked about. So I think this is going to make Ziggs scale a lot stronger. So that's going to be really interesting. There's also saying that they're trying to help him in a way that will help him be a better mid laner without making his bot lane power unreasonable. And so they're trying to give him, these benefits by making them scale less. That's why they're targeting less ability power from getting gold, more focus on points and abilities. But I don't know, Ziggs might fit functionally better as a champion in bot lane, regardless of these changes, regardless of if he's a level or 2 behind mid lane. So I don't know that the extra level or 2 is going to make it worth it to play Ziggs in mid lane or make Ziggs mid lane better than AD carry. But I don't disagree with the way that they went about trying to do that. But it may be the case that if Ziggs becomes good or becomes strong because of this, it may be the case, even though this is targeted at helping mid lane more, it may be the case that he just becomes good bot lane again as well, since that's the role that recently he seems to fit into better. Zoe Q and W damage decreased, damage 7 to 50 to 2 to 50 based on level, and then the rest is staying the same. So that's going to be a significant damage decrease to her Q early on. And then her W is going from 75 to 195 to 60 to 180. So that's losing 15 base damage at all ranks. And then the AP ratio is actually going up by 5%. So this is early on going to significantly decrease her W damage as well. But then later on, she can make up for it. She'd need 300 AP though to make up for, just to get her W back to the same point. So that's a lot. These are pretty significant nerfs to Zoe actually. So we'll see about that. It would also be important to note, obviously, like, how does this damage? 7 to 2 sounds like a lot, but as you go up based on level, depending on whether this is linear or what, it'd be nice to know how this is scaling at all 18 different levels, because it could be that this actually ends up, recovering quite quickly or something like that, the amount of damage. Blade of the Ruin King. Current health on hit, 8% for melee, 5% for ranged, to 9% for melee, 6% for ranged. Blade of the Ruin King has fallen out of favor recently. Meanwhile, there has been a rise in popularity of both health stacking within the game, true, which means Bork should be a more popular pickup. To help get it back on everyone's radar, we're buffing the percentage health damage this item provides, which is the item's biggest selling point in fantasy. I think that this is a totally appropriate change. I think, like we talked about with the Braum changes, Yuntal and IE are dominating the AD carry meta at a time when health stacking is prevalent in the game, and Blade of the Ruin King probably should be an option that we see more often. They've actually gone really conservative here by only increasing the current health on hit by 1%. I think that they could have easily gone more than that, but that would have been really risky in terms of how overpowered it could have become. I don't think this is going to make Blade of the Ruin King overpowered or overtuned, but I think it's going to, it's going to help a little bit, and it's going to remind people that the item exists. The problem is that I think right now, and they'll probably see this as we follow what happens with Blade of the Ruin King over the next patch or two, I think that they're going to realize that these Blade of the Ruin King changes aren't going to change anything about AD carry, and that people aren't going to go Blade of the Ruin King instead. And when they see that like Twitch isn't returning to, does Twitch build Blade of the Rune King? Let's take a look at that. I think he doesn't, right? Or maybe, yeah. Twitch is going Yuntol right now. So my bet is that even a 1% increase to current health on hit for Blade of the Rune King is not going to cause Twitch to switch to it from Yuntol. And Twitch is like a primary user of this item at a time when this item should be popular. So at the end of the day, Yuntol is, how do I put this tactfully? It's not that Yuntol is overpowered. It's that the other 80 carry items suck. I actually think that 80 carries have needed to be stronger, and I've been advocating for their itemization to be stronger for a long time now. So it's not that I think Yuntol and IE needs nerfed or anything like that. It's actually just that the other items are so bad that Yuntol is the only good 80 carry item in the game, and IE is the only good 80 carry item in the game, that all the other ones suck. So it's not that I think Yuntol is broken. I think the other 80 carry items all need buffed because they all suck. So in a meta like this, Blade of the Rune King needs to be strong enough on Twitch for Twitch to be building Blade of the Rune King almost every game or most of the time. And until they can figure out how to tune it that way, we're going to have a problem. Now, my guess is that Riot will actually end up nerfing Yuntol and IE, and then 80 carries are going to have a bad day. So, we'll see about that. But the Riot can go two directions. When they see that their Bork changes aren't enough, they can either nerf Yuntol and IE to get people to choose items like Bork more, or they can keep buffing Bork. And my suggestion would be 80 carry sucks, keep buffing Bork. But we'll see what direction they go. I bet that they'll buff Yuntol, unfortunately. Or I mean nerf Yuntol, unfortunately. Or IE, or both. Haunting Guys. Maximum Haunting Guys is in inventory, 1. So you could obviously stack these component items. It was a bit of a niche, kind of cheesy build. It wasn't necessarily all that amazing, but they don't like it existing in the game. I'm totally fine with that. It goes against what we typically want out of our item system, namely builds that should have peaks and valleys where there's room to beat someone on a weaker spike. As the item's passive stacks, and it's intended for the upgraded versions to do so, we're locking players out of building more than one at a time, as the amount of early health that Haunting Guys stack provides end up making champions unassailable. I agree with that. That's totally fine. Kraken Slayer. Kraken Slayer is an overall weak item right now. I agree. Okay, hold on. Maybe they're moving in the right direction because they're not starting out by nerfing Yuntol and IE. They are buffing Bork, they're buffing Kraken Slayer, and they're buffing Phantom Dancer. So hold your horses. Now they probably need more, although I haven't seen it. But this could be it. They might be saving 80 carry right now. Kraken Slayer is an overall weak item right now, both for melee and ranged users. As such, we're looking to buff it equally by making it a faster early spike and playing up its unique difference with Blade of the Rune King, namely making it deliver more damage to low health enemies. So they're reducing the cost by 100, and the damage amp based on missing health is going from 0 to 50% to 0 to 75%. Again, not very big changes. Kind of nice, but nothing major here. I really don't think that this is going to change anything in a crazy way. But it's a step in the right direction that they're thinking about it like this. I'm just worried that this is like, okay, we're going to attempt to buff Blade of the Rune King and Kraken Slayer and Phantom Dancer, and if it doesn't work and people don't build it and it's not winning a lot, then we're going to nerf Yuntol and IE. They should keep buffing items like this instead of, nerfing Yuntol and IE. Phantom Dancer is the least purchased attack speed crit item in the game, so we'd like to buff it enough to feel more competitive. As it doesn't really have any unique outputs, we're going for a sharp price decrease that should help it feel like a quick spike for crit auto attackers. The price decrease isn't listed here. They are having a tough time today with the patch notes. There's no price decrease, so we'll have to see. I would say check your game and see if there's actually a price decrease, because I don't know what's going on here. Now, the attack speed is being increased by 5%. The movement speed is going up 2%. But if there's a significant cost decrease, and that's all they talked about here in the blurb, then I don't know. I have no idea. I can only comment that a significant cost decrease would be great. If that's on its own, or if that's in combination with these changes, or it doesn't exist and that wasn't the change that they rolled with, I don't know. I think they copy pasted the wrong paragraph, frankly, with the changes that they went with. So my guess is that it's probably not a cost decrease at all, and that it's just the attack speed and the movement speed like we see here. If that's the case, if it's the attack speed and the movement speed like we see here, I think 5% attack speed and 2% movement speed is nice, but again, like the Kraken Slayer and Bork change, not enough to really do a whole lot with the item. So nice change in the right direction, but not significant enough to really change things. Roa. Now that the Roa craze has passed, it's time for us to reinvestigate how the item's performing. Ultimately, we'd like if it was clearly good for the really mana-hungry champions out there who need to stack as many resources as possible. So we're upping its scaling and mana stacking power to make it great on a unique set of champions. So the mana is going up from 400 to 500. The mana per stack is going from 20 to 30. And the maximum mana is going up to 800. Wow. That is really nice for its users. That may be too good. We will see. That's really big. Guardian. Guardian only has a few core users right now, but it's meant to be a reasonable consideration for enchanters who want to index more towards helping out their teammates. This is going to be a problem. This is a bad idea. As such, we're buffing up the level up value and AP ratio, while reducing the bonus HP ratio to keep it consistent on its most common tank users, while making it stronger for those who don't buy as much health. Okay, let's take a look here. Mana, 45 to 120. This is meant to say shield, right? Not mana. They are having a really tough time today, I have to say. Mana, 45 to 120. This is, I think, the shield amount. Yeah, this is the shield amount, not mana. He's stuck on the Roa thing because he typed mana 3 times in a row, and then he went into the next one, and I was like, okay, so this is the shield amount is going from 45 to 120 to 45 to 150. Okay, so the base shield amount is going up at later ranks, but early it's going to be the same. Then, or later levels, I should say. 12.5% AP is being increased to 15% AP. So you're getting an extra 2.5% shielding, and then obviously that's amplified by things like Moonstone and healing and shielding power as well, like we talked about before. So that, yeah, that's going to give not very much, but a little bit of extra shielding to enchanters. This is pretty light, though, I would say, because it's a 2.5% AP ratio increase on something that has a super long cooldown. And then we're going from 8% bonus HP to 5% bonus HP. Let me think about this. I think that that's a significant nerf for tank supports like Braum. First off, the tank supports that are using it, they just nerf Braum. So they're nerfing both Guardian and his armor. The thing is that how much bonus HP do you get versus AP? You very easily, just to put it into perspective, like it's way easier to get 100 bonus AP than it is to get 100 ability power. It's way, way, way cheaper. You get 100 health you get 150 health from Ruby Crystal for 400 gold. But to buy 100 AP, you have to buy like a full item for like 2,000, 3,000 gold. So, and as a support, you're probably getting 2 support AP items that obviously give other stuff, but you're probably looking at like 4,000 gold before you get 100 AP. So losing 3% of your bonus HP means a lot more reduction, because you're going to have 1,000 bonus HP, like maybe 2 items in as a tank support, whereas you're never going to get 1,000 bonus AP or 1,000 AP as a mage support or an enchanter. So the 3% number is higher than the 2.5% increase that enchanters got. And you're going to have, it's a higher amount that's being taken away, and you're going to have way more HP to base that off of anyways. So if you have 1,000 bonus HP, losing 3% is minus 30. That's pretty significant compared to the enchanters losing like, or they're actually gaining 2.5, right, on 100. That's really rough. I would say that like it's pretty equivalent for an enchanter to have 100 AP for like a tank support to get like 1,000 bonus HP. So when we translate it into raw numbers, minus 3% bonus HP means like minus 30 shielding per guardian, whereas for an enchanter it's like plus around the same items you're like plus 2.5 shielding. So that is a big swing, minus 30 off of the shield. That makes Guardian really, really bad. And I've been a hater as far as Guardian is concerned for champions like Braum. I build Guardian every game. I go Guardian every game. But you don't have the same control as enchanters do over when it goes off, because when an enchanter uses an ability on an ally, it's meant to be a heal or a shield, and so Guardian being a shield is good synergy because it triggers at the same time as you want it to trigger. When you W to an ally on Braum, you don't necessarily want your Guardian shield to trigger, because a lot of times you're just using your W as a dash, and it's really hard to trigger it without an ability like that. So for Braum, Guardian gets accidentally wasted all of the time in minor trades, or even Wing to an ally to do objectives like Dragon, or Wing to an ally to move around and then they get hit by a jungle camp, or leashing, or all of these things. Guardian feels really bad for melee supports as it is. So taking 30 shielding off of Guardian makes no sense to me. And the other supports that are performing well besides Braum are not using Guardian. The other tank supports are all using Aftershock. Nautilus, Leona, they're not using, even Thresh. Is Thresh using Guardian? Maybe Thresh is using Guardian. Yeah, Thresh is using Guardian right now. But a lot of the other performers right now are using, Guardian has a slightly higher win rate on Thresh, but people are using Aftershock way more than they're using Guardian. So there is a small subset here. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's a really heavy nerf to Guardian. And then the minimum damage threshold for the trigger. Oh man. This is really bad too, because you actually don't want the minimum damage threshold to be lower, because you want it to go off when your ally is really threatened, because it's such a long cooldown. It's like a minute-long cooldown. So you want Guardian to go off only when you're in an all-in situation. We just talked about how you don't want it going off over minor things. This is going to make it even more finicky, where it goes off when you get hit with a 1 or 2 auto-attack trade, and you don't want it to go off then. You want to save it for a life or death situation. This makes it harder to do that if you're standing near your teammate. So this is another nerf to tank supports and melee supports who are using it, and which is basically Braum. And it's actually a buff to enchanters, because enchanters don't have to worry about dealing with this, because when they proc their Guardian, it's because they chose to by using their ability, rather than it going off because they were standing on top of someone and they took the minimum damage threshold. So this is a really sucky change for Guardian, frankly. This is like an anti-quality of life change. I'm just going to rant about this one even more. It says to me that the people on the balance team at Riot don't understand Guardian users and support. That they actually think that it's a benefit that Guardian triggers when you're taking less damage, so that maybe more frequently you're blocking damage or something like that, when that's not how you want to use Guardian. You want to use Guardian less frequently at times when it actually is going to change the outcome of the situation, because you're in a life or death scenario. The fact that Guardian goes on cooldown all the time during random trades for melee supports makes Guardian worse. So this is an anti-quality of life change, and it just says to me that the people on the balance team don't understand Guardian supports. So that sucks. Then I would say Unsealed Spellbook has been popping off recently. So if Guardian is dead on Braum, or not to say that it's dead, I mean, it's not that bad of a change. But if Guardian is doing worse on Braum, maybe you look at Unsealed Spellbook. Unsealed Spellbook is doing really well recently. It just takes a lot to learn. It's kind of a whole different set of skills that you need. It takes a lot to learn this keystone. They are nerfing here the smite damage. So they're nerfing it at the second swap and the third swap. They're nerfing it by 300 and then by another 300. So, it is getting nerfed a little bit on the smite aspect of it, but other than that, it's really teleport and being able to switch to other summoner spells that's quite good anyways. So this is really not that big of a deal. Champion bounties. Bounty from farming is going from 1 per 17.5 gold to 1 per 20 gold. So you're going to get a little bit lower of a bounty or less bounty from farming. And the bounty suppression threshold was made wider by 25%. So that means that it will make them less spiky when turning on and off. They were seeing a lot of weird, all of a sudden your bounty disappeared situations, and they're going to make that less prevalent. I think that that's totally fine. And then for the skins, I was a little bit surprised. These are arena changes and stuff like that. I was surprised that they're only releasing 4 skins again, including one for the new champion Yunara that's coming out. I don't know how they make any money off of this game anymore. That being said, good luck in solo queue. I might be trying some Halo Blades Braum. Good luck.